Space Marine 2 is a title that's probably special to a lot of you out there. It picked up where the first game left off, bringing Titus right back into the thick of things, with a couple of companions in tow for its single-player mode, and a host of multiplayer options, many of which seem to be great alternatives to a popular multiplayer shooter that had been seeing a bit of fatigue at the time. But the wait for it had been long. Although it was ultimately worth it overall, Space Marine 2 was not without its issues. Despite the swarm engine making you put the game's combat system to good use against the Tyranid hordes, and the Thousand Suns making life complicated, things did need improving. Why not make a great game even better after all, right? It would be a great way to appreciate the legions of loyal Warhammer fans who waited so long for it.
The situation here has deteriorated. Those foul gargoyles pollute the skies.
Tyranids have the orbital weapons.
They do! These unrelenting attacks make a counteroffensive difficult.
We shall take care of that.
Major! We've got more incoming from the east!
Move to reinforce the eastern flank! Go with me!
We will assist in the defense.
Saber has been quite busy over the past year with making those improvements, but have they been busy enough? Is Space Marine 2 still worth visiting if you haven't already played it, and have its updates earned enough value for a replay? Well, let's dive into what's been happening over the past year with this one and find out. The very first major update that came out for the game is a great example of how Saber managed to integrate player feedback via new features being added to the game, as well as fixes to problems that were immediately affecting gameplay. Moreover, there is a compelling argument in favor of the studio's approach to problems that it couldn't entirely resolve without the update. Transparency and accountability were very significant traits in communications regarding feature updates, a facet of the post-release update process that even the best studios sometimes get wrong. That's definitely not been the case with Space Marine 2, and Saber takes a win on that front. The update, Update 5.0, itself brought a sweeping change to the game's melee combat, which was criticized for being a tad bit repetitive thanks to an easy exploit with a well-timed parry followed by a gun attack. It kind of rendered using other attacks redundant since it was so easy to exploit enemy attacks and set up a damage loop that was quite handy in the field. It also made blocking weapons feel underpowered by comparison. But with the perfect block system, all melee weapons and their abilities became viable options, making the process of getting up close and personal with tougher enemies feel as challenging as it could have been with very enjoyable results. A new enemy type also joined the Thousand Suns and was a great test subject for the new melee combat mechanics. Moreover, the extermination bonuses made a lot of sense for players who wanted to farm out some XP and rewards, while having the option to skip those encounters and their objective entirely were welcome touches in addition to tweaks and balancing changes. Things got hardcore with the next major update. The 6.0 Data Vault update brought the absolute difficulty to PvE mode, and it was a banger. Brutal, deadly, and suitably satisfying when you could scrape a win together, this was the perfect way to experience the game's combat. The stakes felt real, and every bullet was a valuable tool that could mean a better chance of survival. The Tyranids and all the myriad threats Titus had to face down were suddenly all the more deadly here. The Biovore also made its way to the game, and if you haven't faced one of those bad boys in battle, it's a real sight to behold. Effective at both melee and range combat, this one stands out with a design that oozes menace and a moveset that can test your knowledge of the game's mechanics quite well. Emotes, FOV sliders, and new finishers, along with cosmetics and bug fixes, rounded out this one's list of additions to the game. Now, as things moved into 2025, a bunch of major updates have continued to make changes to the game that you might find quite interesting if you dropped off after its release or perhaps moved on to other titles. The 7.0 Trigon update brought a new PvE operation, Season Pass content, and a crucial change to multiplayer, namely the ability to form private PvP lobbies. This made it all the more easier to dive into multiplayer with your buddies, making it a treat for Warhammer 40k fans who wanted to enjoy the game with specific groups. There was also a solid choice of secondary weapons added in both PvP and PvE, making this one quite an important update from a gameplay perspective. That's made even more significant since it finally brought around the next batch of changes to weapon perks, and ensured that any weapon you picked up would have a buff for it as per the developers. Once again, the team at Saber's Communications deserves a special mention here, with an approach that simulated a conversation between the studio and its community of players. Their feedback being acknowledged while a clear plan to the ultimate goal of perfection was laid out with clarity. But an interesting detail that came to the surface in the next update was evident in the manner in which the studio handled feedback around the supposedly underpowered Assault class. While acknowledging that it could be seen that way, Saber pointed out the problems it identified with it, respectfully standing its ground on how the problem wasn't with the class itself. It showed just how much passion the studio brought for the Warhammer 40k franchise was bringing to the table, while also being prudent enough to keep its fans on the same page through measured, carefully crafted messaging. We'd argue it's a great approach that has helped the studio keep its title alive, and perhaps even earned goodwill for the sequel that's coming along sometime in the future. Along with class perks, the 9.0 Quality of Life update brought important changes to the data vault, QOL changes to combat, a long list of improvements and balancing tweaks, and improvements to stability, performance, and matchmaking. Space Marine 2 began to feel quite different to the game we had played in 2024, and there was still more to come. It was time to celebrate the game's anniversary. The 10.0 anniversary update brought stratagems, a new operation with an outstanding boss, the Hellbrute Onslaught PvP game mode complete with a playable Hellbrute, new weapons and multiple variants of existing ones, more Season Pass content, and more fixes to the game. Of course, it was the stratagems that had our attention right from the get-go. Their modifiers have made the game's combat system have many unique twists that had us scrambling to keep up, the changes they brought making us rethink our own approach on many occasions. And since they rotate out quite consistently, it's made them our favorite part of the experience. They bring very interesting and unpredictable layers to the combat system and are a great way to test your ability to think on your feet in the field, which isn't easy if you're facing down the game's Tyranid hordes. As of November's 11.0 patch, which brought one important change to the game's multiplayer which merits comment here, there has been such an extensive list of changes, along with new PvE maps and equipment, along with other additions that could make Space Marine 2 feel different even from the version that was in place earlier in this year. But the removal of the netcode's damage cap is the one we found most interesting, with many players making increasingly creative builds that brought some incredible damage output numbers to the table. Saber's decision and the accompanying announcement showcases a confidence in its ability to sustain the balance of its combat enough to keep it interesting. It was also nice that the studio pinpointed combinations it was looking to address, allowing players who relied on them to try switching things up ahead of a new patch. But the studio's confidence and its resolve in constantly attempting to perfect the experience on offer in Space Marine 2 bodes well for the game's second year. I mean, there's already a roadmap of content in place from Saber after all. While the second year of Space Marine 2 might be a different story from the first, it's safe to say that this is a shooter that's as potent as it was when it took the stage, and has perhaps picked up a few new tricks along the way to keep things interesting. With more to come as another year goes by, Space Marine 2 continues to be an easy recommendation to those of you who dig shooters, and a love letter to Warhammer fans that seeks to truly capture their hearts. For the rest of you out there, it's still a lot of fun and worth a try. So let's hope that the Ultramarines have another great year with us at their sides. So, what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.